Hello everyone and welcome to another video. I hope that you are very, very well. Today I am bringing you my January wrap-up, the first wrap-up of 2024. And boy did we get off to a good start. Oh, it was such a great reading month. I read 11 books this month, a really nice variety of books. I say it's a great reading month. I read a lot and I read some fantastic books. It was a very even split quality-wise though. Of the 11 books I read, they're fairly evenly split across 2 through to 5 stars. There was one DNF, I think, which is probably why there wasn't a 1 star, because I tend to just DNF if I'm not enjoying it enough to give it 1 star, then it gets DNF'd. But yeah, so a nice even spread across the different ratings, a nice spread across genres. So yeah, all in all, off to a great start to the year. You will notice there are quite a lot of dark academia books on this month's, well, a lot, 4 dark academia books in this month. I started doing a dark academia reading vlog, and then I just stopped vlogging but carried on reading the books. So that's why there's a little bit of a theme. So yeah, I've got 11 books to talk about. As always, I'm ranking them from my least favourite to my favourite. So without any further ado, let's start off with the 2-star books I read in January. So my least favourite book that I read in January, and I think this will come as a surprise, is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. Because everyone loves this book, and I did not. Couldn't figure out what it was with this book. You know when you kind of, I don't know if anyone else does this, when you're like, I don't know why I'm not enjoying this book, guess it's a me problem, I'm going to keep going. And then about 300 pages in, I was like, you know what, I'm actually just not enjoying this. Like, the reason I'm struggling to set aside time to sit and pick it up is that I'm not enjoying it. But I was already 2/3 the way through, I was committed, so I finished it, I read it, I was not fussed. I really liked the setting. I loved it at the start. The Yale setting, the secret societies, the like paranormal twist. I loved all of that. There were so many characters. Like so many characters. And they were being brought in the whole way through the book. Either that or they were there the whole time and I just didn't remember them because there was so much else going on. So there were too many characters and so many different little bits of plots. But it didn't really feel like there was like one overarching plot or theme. So many things got brought up and then dropped. So yeah, I didn't really enjoy this one. This is my second attempt at a Leigh Bardugo book. I read Shadow and Bone, is that the first one? Years ago, and it was fine. I gave it 3 stars. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to give this one a go, because all of her books seem like the sort of thing I would enjoy. So I gave this one a go. It was not for me. So this was my least favourite book of January. The other 2-star read was Miss Austen Investigates by Jessica Bull. This is exactly as it seems on the cover. It is a murder mystery and the detective is Jane Austen. I was expecting it to be fun, and it was fun. That did deliver. The actual mystery was a letdown in terms of the reveal, the methodology. None of that really worked. And I'm also, okay, so I read a lot of Regency books because I love Regency books. And there's quite often this sort of quasi-Lady Whistledown way of writing that just, if it's done well, is brilliant, but is very rarely done that well. And that was present here. There were a few too many sort of, oh, good heavens, Lord such and such, you know, all the, well, sort of overly Jane Austen-y type, sort of, you know, and I love Jane Austen, of course I do, but she does it authentically because she's from the time, you know, and I think, yeah, a lot of modern authors, it's overdone, and it was overdone here. I also, and this is another pet peeve, which, okay, it works in Regency romance because it's part of the genre, is the overly prudishness of the characters. So this is a young Jane Austen. This is like before the Regency era, so that those Regency sensitivities haven't really come in yet, and it just felt a bit disingenuous to have all of these characters so prudish and so scandalised at everything when they're Georgians. Like, the Georgians loved scandal, you know? And, like, they weren't scandalised in the same way that Regency and Victorians were. Yeah, there's this kind of in-between period. And it felt like it was written 20 years later than it was set. Or set 15 years later than it actually was. I don't know. It's all... I'm guessing a lot here. But yeah, I was enjoying it to start with. And then as it went on, I was enjoying it less and less. So it got 2 stars from me. Moving up into the 3-star zone, first of all, is Let There Be Light by A.M. Johnson. I read this for the Buzzword reading pick, and I should have said at the start, I always forget to say this, but it is in the description, that I always put in the description where I got these books from, i.e. was I given them for review. This is not one I was given for review, a fair chunk of them were, but I will mark in the description which ones were. So, Let There Be Light I read for the Buzzword reading challenge, and... okay, so it's a romance, it's a queer romance, kind of coming of age story, and I really liked the romance. It was a really good romance, slow burn, but also kind of, you had that like instant connection. It was really intense, had that sort of like yearning behind it, but that was the entire book. It was just yearning the whole time, basically. Yearning and tragedy, yeah. So, yeah, I really enjoyed the romance and the like main storyline. It just didn't really have many shades for me. I would have liked... I always feel like Michelle Visage when I read a book like this in Drag Race. She's always like, it didn't have any shades. You needed different shades of the character. So yeah, that's what I felt like. I felt like it needed more shades. It needed more nuance. It could have done with some other storylines. And also, I feel very... I don't know. Okay, so... Let's circle back. The end of the story, then the 2 main characters are kind of outed, and the dean of their university, and they're having a meeting with the dean of the university about their relationship, and he's like, I support you, yay for the gay. Love that for him, we love an ally. An ironic gay clap. But here's the thing, it was set in like a relatively liberal state. I think it was set in a Catholic college, but apart from the name of the college, that was never brought up. Like, that's just guessing based on the name of the college. It didn't feel like part of the kind of fabric of the university. And yeah, I know that this is coming from a place of like living in a very liberal place. It felt very 10, 15 years ago. In fact, 20 years ago. It felt very 20 years ago. And yeah, I think it's slightly overdone. I think a little bit more, again, much more nuance would have been plenty. Yeah, I think bringing in like the dean of university at the last second to be like, I support having gays at the university, and you're like, yay, it is. I think this was written in like 2019. It was not, you know, marriage equality had been around for a while. So yeah, that was a very long rant about a little thing that annoyed me, but it did annoy me. But on the whole, the actual romance I really liked. So then we have Where Sleeping Girls Lie by Farida Abike Iyamide. And now this is the only downside of ranking the books rather than go through in the order I read them, is I actually read Ace of Spades, her other book, which I've got here. I read this first and loved it. Spoiler for later in the video. And then I read the arc I had of Where Sleeping Girls Lie. And yeah, I was a little disappointed because I'd just come from an amazing book that she'd written. But I mean, it still had loads going for it. It was still really great. So it's set in an English boarding school, or British boarding school. I don't think it was specifically English. And the main character, she's been homeschooled her whole life, and she arrives at the school, and within 2 weeks, her roommate goes missing, and more mysterious things start to happen. Mystery was so great, and the way it was resolved, well, not really resolved, the kind of reveal at the end was so sort of, it was good. It was the kind of good that makes you so mad at the world and makes you want to throw the book out the window because it was that good. That's where like the reveal at the end was, you know? I was like, oh, I'm so mad at everything and everyone, and this book has made me feel that way, and that's good. It's good. So yeah, that was all really, really great. And there were so many different aspects of the mystery and the story that I did really enjoy. 2 big downsides for me. 1, it was too long. The pacing was too slow. and not even too slow. Like, I like a slow paced book. There was just a whole lot of nothing in the middle that, you know, could have been significantly cut down. And the second thing is, and this is a pet peeve of mine, is if you've not been led to believe that there is an unreliable narrator, and then there is a reveal about the narrator's life, well, not necessarily narrator, but the main character. You know, if there is a reveal that they knew the whole time that you didn't, then it feels like a kind of, it's my least favourite kind of plot twist, you know? And that happened here. There was a no way, like, we knew there were secrets, but at no way, in no point did I think, this is an unreliable narrator, and there is definitely something dark going on in her past, or we are being kept back. And I think the whole thing would have been more compelling if we had known her story the whole way through. So, lots of really good things. A couple of things that didn't work for me. But on the whole, a great mystery. And then the final 3-star book for me is The Principles of Psychology by Shona Saul. Now, I went into this is an audiobook, I listened to the audiobook, and I went in with trepidation because I'd listened to The Principles of Philosophy, which has the same publishers, same series, but different author, and it did not work as an audiobook. It was clearly like a reference book that was meant to have like tables and diagrams and was then being read out as an audiobook, including the tables just being read out row by row. And I was like, why is this an audiobook? But then there was another one, I was like, you know what, I will give them a second chance. And it was exactly the same. It was so interesting. The stuff that was in there was fascinating. Especially I really enjoyed the chapter on developmental psychology. There was so much interesting stuff in there, but it did not work for an audiobook. There were some tables that were just read out verbatim. The last 2 chapters felt like appendices, and I really wanted there to be a conclusion. It was just like, oh, we've just stopped having been spoken at for ages about why people apply to jobs, because it was sort of applied psychology, so like occupational psychology and health psychology and that sort of thing. It started off strong, but it did not work as an audiobook. And this is what really confuses me about this series. So as I said, this is the second one I've read, and I've had ARCs for both for audiobooks. In both cases, ARCs have only been available for the audiobooks, and they've released the audiobooks before they released the actual book. So I don't know why they're pushing... Oh, I just spilled tea everywhere. I don't know why they're pushing these audiobooks so much, because I don't think it really works. So yeah, I just wanted to read it. Maybe, I don't know. I learnt so much, but it did not work as an audiobook. We are moving on up into the 4-star zone, and I have another non-fiction one to talk to you about. It's an inkling. It's All the Violet Tiaras, Queering the Greek Myths by Jean Menzies, and I enjoyed this so much. Also, I managed to say it. The first time I tried to say Queering the Greek Myths, I said Queering the Queeks, so... There we go. This is exactly what it says on the tin. It's all about how Greek myths have been used in not just recent years, but focusing on recent years, how they've been used to explore queer themes and queer stories, and how queer people have connected to them. It was a really fun little read for anyone who enjoys queer mythology, which I think is most people on bookish internet. So yes, this was a really fun little read that gave a sort of academic insight into something we all enjoy. Next 4-star I want to talk about is When We Become Ours, which is a YA adoptee anthology, specifically about transracial adoptees. And this is a topic I've been really interested in recently. I've read a couple of other books about adoption from different aspects, different perspectives. And it's a collection of short stories, all written by transracial adoptees, about transracial adoptees, and it was really moving. There were some stories that were tragic, some that were really fun, some that were just sort of, got you frustrated on behalf of these characters. So many different genres, and what I think really, the benefit of having a short story collection, because so often when I see discussion of adoption and the ethics of adoption online, and I think specifically it's worth mentioning, specifically the American adoption system and also the international adoption system and transracial adoption. You know, there are so many different kinds of adoption that each come with their own pros and cons. Feels too bland. But you know, there are different things to consider. For example, the ethical quandaries of international adoption, etc. So I feel like having a short story collection gave it so much more nuance than the sort of conversations we see online, which feel very all or nothing. Partly because of the nature of how we communicate online with, you know, 2-minute videos or a tweet or something very short, is that often it's a very emotional and fraught conversation, and then it will be two people talking about completely different experiences. And I think this book really helped to bring those experiences together and show that it's not one size fits all, you know? So it was a really, really good book. I did listen to the audiobook for this one again, and each story, well, not every story, but there were different narrators for the different stories, which I really like in a short story collection, because it really helps me as I listen to it to like mentally separate which one is which. So yeah, this was a really enjoyable collection. And then my top 4-star book, which was the inspiration for all of this dark academia reading, is An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson. This is a dark academia book inspired by the novella Carmilla. So it's sapphic, there's vampires, there's mystery. Oh, I had the best time. This is one of those books I just could not put down. I started reading it, I was like, I'll just read one chapter, and then suddenly I'd read like a third of the book. You know, I'd be like, oh, I've got 5 minutes, and then an hour and a half later, I would still be reading, and I would have to stop to do things like go to work, you know? So I was just gripped, absolutely gripped by this book. And so it's set in a college in Massachusetts in, I believe, the 70s or the 60s, that sort of time period. The big difference at the start is that Carmilla is not a vampire to begin with. She and Laura are both humans, and they are both in the same poetry class for Professor de La Fontaine, who is of course a significant figure in the Carmilla story. And okay, so I think it was a book of two halves. This is why it became 4 stars rather than 5 stars for me, is it felt like a book of two halves. The first half was very dark academia. The second half was the Carmilla story. And I would have loved them to be mixed up. I just felt like halfway through I was like, oh, this is a different story now than it was at the start. So yeah, such a great read. Really great sort of enemies to lovers, yearning romance. Definitely a more mature side of the Carmilla story. And the vampires, and sort of exploring how vampires are often used as a metaphor for things like queerness, etc. So yeah, I had the best time. I loved it so much. It's such a great read. We have made it into the 5-star zone, my friends. And the first 5-star book, I've already mentioned it, it's Ace of Spades by Farida Abike Amide. This was the talk of BookTube when it came out a few years ago, and it deserves all the hype it got. It was so, so good. It's set in an elite academy that is majority white students, and there are 2 black students at this academy. And over the course of this book, they start to receive mysterious messages, to have their secrets being exposed, and to become blackmailed by a secret organisation called the Aces. It is a proper page turner. I could not put it down. I hardly ever read thrillers, but I loved this one. I think partly because it had so many other themes and aspects to it. But yeah, I could not put it down. I was like on the edge of my seat, and the reveals towards the end I did not see coming, but they made perfect sense, which is the best kind of reveal. I'm here for it. And yeah, this was just such a good read, and it used that thriller aspect to kind of personify some things that are real, but some things that are anxieties. Those things were personified into the villain in this book. and it was a really great commentary on race, on sexuality, on gender, on elitism in academia, all of that sort of thing. It was all turned into one, and I thought it was done really, really well. This is such a great book. You should just read it. It's so good. Next up is The East Indian by Brinda Chari, and this has been described as a Dickensian-like yarn, and I think that is such a good description of it. So it's set in the 17th century, in the early days of Western colonisers in North America, and the main character, who he has been called Tony, that is not the name he was born with, but it's the name he was given, it's the name we know him by. He is from East India, which it took me way too long to realise that that is what we now call India. In my head I was thinking it's the eastern side of India, but it's India as opposed to the West Indies. So yeah, he is from India, East India as it was known, and it sort of follows his life as he makes his way to London and then is taken to Virginia. It sort of follows the path of his life in the way that a Dickens novel would, and explores all these themes of class and race and equality and colonisation, again in the way Dickens would, through his eyes. I got so sort of swept up into the story. Again, this was an audiobook that I listened to, and I just felt like I was there. I felt like I was part of the story, and so sort of engaged, like he was just sitting there telling it to me, you know? It is like having someone just tell you their life story. It was brilliantly written, really brilliant story. Highly, highly recommend. And we have made it to my best book that I read in January, and that is Strong Female Character by Fern Brady. I love Fern Brady. I have been a big fan of hers. I think I first saw her, I've never seen her live. I would love to see her live. I first saw her perform. She's a stand-up comedian. She was on the Russell Howard show back in the day. Like, it was her first time on the Russell Howard show. I think she's hilarious, and yeah, I got the chance to review it with the new paperback release, and I was like, yes. Read a few memoirs from comedians, and usually they are sort of a, you know, here's all the things I did in my life, which is fine. That's what a memoir kind of is at its, you know, barest form. This is so much more. So Fern was diagnosed with autism a couple of years ago, and this book is her kind of looking back over her life, and boy has she had a life. Her looking back over her life and sort of applying that autistic lens to it and going, oh yeah, that makes sense now. Oh no, this is why this happened, this is why this happened, this is why I reacted this way to this is why I thrived here, this is why I struggled here. And she looks back at her life with that lens, and it's so good. It is funny occasionally it is like proper, you know, laugh out loud, chuckle funny. Sometimes it's that dark comedy when someone makes a really dark joke about their own life, and you're like, oh yeah, because you're like, oh no, that's so heartbreaking and tragic, but also you did make a really funny joke about it. It's exactly the right balance. It explores so many different ideas, but yeah, the main theme of this is her own autism, and also how autism affects women differently and how women are perceived differently when they are autistic. So really, really excellent read for a whole number of reasons. If you like Fern as a comedian, read it. If you are interested in neurodivergence in women, read it. I think everyone should read it, because everyone should know about neurodivergence and more about it, myself included. So this book, incredible, absolutely loved it. Read it. And that is it. We're losing the light, even though it's like midday. But thank you very much for joining me. Let me know what you read in January in the comments, and if you liked the look of any of the books that I've mentioned. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to see more videos from me. I will see you all next time. Ta-ra for now.